My brothers and sisters, welcome to another Salem Speaks broadcast. We are delighted once again to be back in your presence. Thank God for another day. It's a beautiful day on the outside. Actually, it's a little warm now. We're getting very close to summer now. Many of you would have began to turn your air conditioning units on, but we can't complain. Thank God for a beautiful day here in the Bahamas, Nassau, New Providence in particular. Today, we are continuing in our series on financial planning and retirement. And we have back with us this evening Pastor Dino Cartwright. Dino, so good to have you once again with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be back at Salem.
Yes. Thank you very much,
Yes,
Dino.
sir.
And Dino, last week we had a very interesting program. I think a number of persons told me that they benefited greatly from
Awesome.
your presentation, and they are anxiously looking forward to what they're going to learn today, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, we want to begin today, Dino, by speaking about a bad word in the Bahamian vernacular. That bad word is budgeting.
Right.
And the reason I call it a bad word is because when we tell people about budgeting, they're trying to wonder, like, which planet we just came from, because fact of the matter is, they don't have anything. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but I think it bears repeating if I did, that most Bahamians do not have $100 in their bank in a savings account. The majority of Bahamians do not have $100 in savings.
Right. Even central bank statistics said that up to 90% of Bahamians don't have $500 to $1,000 in their savings, and so that necessarily means that the majority of the Bahamas is one step away, one paycheck away, I should say, from going into financial dismal.
Okay, good. So $500. Sorry, $500 to $1,000.
Right.
And okay, with that in mind, that's where we want to begin this evening, because if you don't have money, if most persons are underwater, they would need to get, actually, I would say, to a level or -5 or whatever they're going to do before they can begin to say they're going to budget, because, and this is me speaking from my ignorant mind in finances, because your money is already budgeted. You owe everybody.
Correct.
So please help us, Dino, this evening to most of us to get to a point where we can say we can budget and our money is not already taken before payday.
And I'm glad that you started there, because that helps us to take the big, great elephant out of the room. Because a number of persons, we talk about finances, and we have these pie in the sky idealistic things about having a budget and setting aside an emergency fund and everything like that, but we don't have sufficient. We have barely enough to survive, and so we are now, a number of persons, even after this pandemic, are now choosing which bill they're going to pay, and they're choosing how much on that bill am I going to pay.
Right.
That is the reality of persons, and I think when we start from the reality of where we are, we can help people more. I would often tell persons that even prior to budgeting is this idealistic picture of where we send our money, but we already know where our money has gone. And so right now we have to now change our mindset to determine how we're going to raise money, or how we're going to find liquid cash before we start talking about setting out a budget. So ideally, we ought to be having a budget, but I would advise persons who don't have that money right now to have a budget, to find out how can I turn over quick cash. How do I do that? There are some things that I can sell quickly. There are some things that I can stop paying premium on. So for instance, every month you may have to cut out your excessive cell phone bill. You may have to pull back on some of the packages on Cable Bahamas that you want to do. You may have to even go to the extent, I know this sounds horrific for some persons, but cut Netflix. There are certain things that if you look at your pay slip, or it's not even pay slip, if you look at your bank statement now, you can see all of these little $15.99, $11.99 that you're paying that need to be cut first. And so before you set out doing a budget, the first thing is you must find out where your money has gone.
Right.
Your budget tells you where your money is to go, but before you tell it where to go, you have to find out where it's
It's
going
going.
or where it's gone, and you have to learn how to plug the leak. There are a number of us, and I found recently that there was a bank, and we're not going to call it any names, but they've switched over their card system, and because they've switched over their card system and changed the numbers on the cards, a number of automatic payments are now coming up decline because, of course, you've changed your number. And it wasn't until that happened I realized how many small subscriptions I've been paying. I've been paying something at for Netflix here, or I've been paying something at Canva, or even sometimes an Apple.com thing shows up, and it shows you that if you just really watch what you've spent or what you spend on a monthly basis, you can find these these little small leaks that you
Right.
have in your system. And so before I tell persons to start budgeting and to tell them money where to go, I would advise them find out where it's going now.
Find out where your money is going. And that'll take me back to something that I think you might have mentioned last week, um, Pastor, because that sounds to me like people need to get what I would say a little discipline in their life, in their spending. Because more than likely, what got them in the position that they're in is because they are undisciplined in what they are doing. So maybe, Pastor, what they do need to do is the first thing they need to do is to find out. I would say, this is how I would say it. What is I'll call it a vision in our vernacular
Yes, sir.
in the theological arena. I'll call it a vision. You would call it probably out there a plan. You need to plan out your life and decide, well, what it is that I want to accomplish.
Correct.
Then maybe I can be disciplined in how I spend my money. But if I don't have any, so talk about the lack of that, which causes us to lose that discipline, and then our money is going on Netflix, and we buying all kind of cable, the programs on cable. Okay, we want to watch sports, so we got to buy that whole ESPN package.
Right.
We want to watch the NBA, we want to watch the NFL, or whatever it is. And I don't think that people really understand at the end of the day, those $5.99s add up.
They add up, and they add up because you have that, you add VAT on top of that, you add the conversion on top of that. And so when you would find, I will often tell persons as well, and this goes back to the scripture of without a vision the people perish, literally meaning that without a clear revelation people have cast off restraints, meaning they have no boundaries, they have nothing to focus on, and the lack of focus is what causes us to go down this dismal path of debt. And now granted there are some areas where people have to go into debt, but for a number of persons, because of the lack of forward vision, there's nothing for them to look forward to. There's nothing for them to aspire to. And so what would we tell persons oftentimes when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to spending money, is actually know where every cent is going. And you would be amazed if you do a daily check, and right on your phone there are some apps that you can download for free that track and how you spend your money. And when you realize how much you're spending, I just told my wife, I said, when you look and you go to fast food restaurant, just for me and her, it's almost $20. And if you go there 3 times a week, you may not realize it because you're swiping. One of the things I found, Pastor Rule, is that while debit cards are easy and while they are convenient, they often cause us to switch off our mind concerning spending. You would find that people they would restrict more their spending when they have to spend cash. It hurts more to peel off cash as opposed to kind of swiping. You would realize that even when you used to travel back in the day and you didn't have all these debit cards and stuff, you had to get your money converted to cash, you would think twice about peeling off that first 100, that second 100, and stuff like that. And so right now we have to become conscious when it comes to our spending. We have a lot of persons who have already given up hope concerning savings. So right now they're trying to survive day by day. But if you're going to ever come out of this rut and save and leave something for the next generation, we have to be conscious spenders, and that's where we have to get to.
Or even just to survive in this. And we're not even talking about leaving anything yet.
Right.
Just to actually make it in this.
Correct.
To survive.
To actually
this.
make it, yes.
Now, I want to veer off and talk about something else, because this is popping up a whole lot with certain members of churches, that we have some people who are who have certain who work in a particular arena, the tourism industry, the hotel industry,
Correct.
and when they would have gotten their loans, they would have gotten their loans based on
Tips.
the income of both of them.
Correct.
And COVID happened,
Yes.
and all of us know that since COVID happened, these hotels really have not opened back up yet. Could we speak to people about the right now about the wisdom actually of two persons working in the same industry or at the same place, and both of them lose their income? Is that something that we need to think about now, particularly in our country, because
That
this is happening a whole lot where no income is coming in because both persons work at the same hotel.
right, and you know, I guess we could say you don't really know where love lies, and so you can't help who you fall for.
Yeah.
But a lot of times in that instance, what we would advise persons is that even if you find yourself in that situation, there ought to be somebody who is while you ought to live as if, because you understand the risk of your industry and you understand the vulnerability of your industry. You understand the peaks and the
Yeah.
troughs in your industry. This isn't something new. And so when you have that kind of thing, when you have that kind of understanding, when you go into this, we would say try to live off of one salary. In that one person uses their salary to save or to store up, the other uses their salary to pay the bills that you have to come into the house. And oftentimes you would want to know that because of our industry, we have it forces us to live a certain way. It forces us to have a certain lifestyle. And oftentimes we would find that in industries like that, you would have there are some situations where persons have saved, have built their houses, they've done well. But that was when tourism was really that's
Yes.
when the Bahamas was the tourism destination. But because of increased challenges or increased competition around the Caribbean and even with Airbnb, and persons aren't coming to hotels like that, we have to now think, okay, how can we live with just one person working? Always have a thought in your mind that there has to be a disaster recovery plan for your household. And so while we can't tell them who to fall for, who to fall in love with, and we will want to tell them, if that is your case, act as if there's only one person living in the house, because there will be seasons when there are slow seasons.
Yeah.
And so you're working 1 or 2 days out of the week, and you have to adjust in that kind of way. Always be thinking that way. Always be thinking the kind of industry you're in.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up. Don't want to try control love with anybody, but I was just trying to get it across to people that be mindful
Yes.
that those of you who work in the same industry, particularly at the same place, that there is vulnerability in that,
Yes.
and that you ought to have a plan.
You have to
in
consider
case
it. You
something
have to
happens.
definitely consider
Yes,
that.
because COVID has taught us that.
Yes.
There's some things that COVID has taught us that going forward, that we ought to inculcate in the practice in our lives. All right, let's move on, continuing with debt, Pastor. I think we were talking a little earlier before we came on air about the difference between paying off your debt and wanting to invest in an asset,
Correct.
an asset that will be able to help you going forward. So, if somebody has an idea that I want to start a maintenance business, and I have $3,000 or so that I want to, or that I need to invest in purchasing a vehicle to move me around, to take care, or to be able to make an investment and make returns. Do I take that $3,000 and pay off my debt? Or should I take that money and invest it in something that is going to continue to bring returns.
Now-
Which way should I go?
Now, when I got my certified financial planner, there was a certain script we had, and the script was pay off debt. And there are some certain schools of thought to say debt is bad. What I've learned being in the industry, I'm working with persons for a while. Whatever generates income, that is what you go after. And so in the instance whereas somebody has an opportunity to purchase a vehicle, to do some maintenance work, or to do not just have an asset, but have an asset that generates income,
yes.
I would advise them to go ahead and purchase the asset that generates income, work hard with that asset and that generates income, or that business that generates income, to pay off that existing debt.
Right.
Because what I've found is that a number of persons pay off debt and they say they're debt free, and then they realize they have no liquid cash. A bank can have as many capital, as much assets as they want to, but if the bank is not liquid, it's out of business. And the same thing happens with the company. It's the same thing happens with your life. When there is no liquid cash or access to money that you can easily just get to pay off, or to, because an emergency comes up, we always find ourselves in a lurch and find ourselves repeating the cycle of that debt. So, for instance, you take the $3,000, you forego that bus or that van, whatever you want to do, and you go ahead and you purchase that. You pay off that credit card. You have no more credit card, but then the month following, there is something that comes up that needs help right away. What do? You go right back to that bank and get a credit card again to deal with that, and so now you have debt again and still no income generating asset.
Right.
My what I want to tell persons is that this is the time that we have to learn how to go after assets.
Right.
And we have to understand now that debt will be with us always. And while it's not good to always increase debt, it's always better to find a way to generate additional income.
So is there something then that we can say as good debt?
There is good debt. Good debt is always is when you would borrow to purchase an asset that is income generating. It's not just to buy an asset now, because and this is where the schools of thought go crazy, because a lot of persons look at their house, their dwelling place, their dwelling home as their asset. But and while technically, when you look at accounting, that is considered an asset because it is part of land, property, capital. Land and property. What happens is, if it doesn't generate income or bring money back to you, it is an asset, of course, but it's more of a liability to you until you pay it off.
Right.
But even when you pay it off with the bank, there are still expenses that are attached to that. You still have to maintain it. You still have to pay for it. You still have to cover it with insurance, because you could have paid for that house for 30 years, finish that mortgage on year 31, God forbid that house burns down, you have no, and you would have foregone that insurance, you still have no asset.
Yeah.
So what happens now, what I advise persons is learn how to invest in asset generating income. And when we grew up, growing up in Exuma, you would find a number of the men in the settlements had a truck, because the truck was more than just an asset. The truck was their way to make money. Their truck, they invest, and there was always this adage that every man should have a truck, because he said that if you run out of if your job lays you off, somebody needs something towed from here to there. Somebody needs a furniture set, and you can make an extra $70 here. Someone needs something to go to the dump, you can make an extra $80 there. And your asset, your truck, is actually now your income generating asset. And so what I advise young people to do, even when we go out there and we want to get our vehicle, think about it. When you drive off the lot, 20% of the value goes off of that car. But what happens is, if you purchase something that allows you to generate income or generate an additional stream of income, then that is a better investment to make.
Right. I think, and I'm wondering, Pastor, as we look at this, that in our country we are not teaching our young people enough what should I say? How to increase wealth.
Right.
It seems as if we are just teaching our people to be consumers.
Correct.
We are not teaching them, like from they are very small, that you ought to always have a mindset of how I'm going to generate wealth. What are some things that you think we need to do, even probably in curriculums in school?
Right.
Because we have to begin this early. There are certain what we say, nationalities that teach their children really from they come out of the womb that you are an entrepreneur, you are a business person, and they teach them every day how to do that.
Right.
What about the mindset?
It's about the mindset of first of all, wealth comes from a mindset. It comes from a way, it's a certain way that you think. It's about looking at life as if you are a consumer. You're either one or two things. You're a consumer or you're a producer.
Right.
All right? And the producers will always have something in their house, and consumers will always be looking for something. How do you do this? You ensure that your children understand that there is an expectancy that you leave more for the generation behind you. A number of us, we've made the mistake of thinking that because we would have gone through a hard time coming up, that our children ought to not get that hard end of the
Yes.
stick and they ought to do better. Granted,
Right.
that is true, but you would find that a number of those billionaires and those who are, they leave their children little to nothing. They have some billionaires actually, who say, okay, I'm going to leave my child about 10 million. That's it. I'm going to donate 98% of my wealth to charity
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff, because they've said, if I taught you how to generate income, I don't need to give you cash.
Right.
You have that thinking capacity to
Right.
actually create wealth. The Bible tells us that God says, I've given you power to create wealth, meaning that I've enabled you, I've given you an anointing to create wealth. Wealth is something that can be created when we teach our children how to look for opportunities, where we teach our children that every problem that is out there is a potential business. And when you train them what to look at, when you train them how to see things and how to see problems, then you are developing that entrepreneurial mindset. An entrepreneur is more than just buying a logo. An entrepreneur is more than just going to business license and paying $100 and getting a business license. It's about a way to add value. We have to teach our children that when you come into this world, you ought to go a place where you add value. And the first place you add value is yourself, because you are your biggest commodity. You are the selling point. Your brain is the selling point. We have to, even if our schools don't teach it, we have to learn to teach it in our homes. And for far too long, things like money has been taboo around the dinner table, but the wealthy teach their children around the dinner table what to do, how to spend money.
Right.
What is it that you got your allowance? How did you spend this? You train the child in the way they ought to go, and so that when they grow old, they not depart from it. This is more than your faith.
Yeah.
This is teaching them how to be about their father's business. This is about teaching them, even when you identify that they may not be academically inclined, put them in the path of their strength.
Right.
Because a lot of times we focus on our weaknesses and we try to strengthen our weaknesses, but the truth of the matter is, if we find our strength and maximize our strength and master our strength, then we are able to always have a job, that we always have an income.
Yes, and when you mentioned the word job just now, I'm wondering to whether we are not training the masses in our country to get jobs
We are.
rather than training them to be wealth.
And the interesting part about it is that as soon as I said job,
Yeah.
I felt that rebuke. I felt that slap hit
Yeah.
me, because I literally, when you said that, I said, oh boy.
Yeah.
And because I thought about it and I said, this is how much they've trained us to rhetoric. And even so, when you hear, even we've being so brainwashed that even when politicians, all they do is promise jobs.
Yes.
And when election time comes and they say, we're going to get 10,000 jobs, we forget everything else. We dump everything else and we get jobs. A number of persons, even during the pandemic, they started off their entrepreneurial ventures. They started baking here. They started
Right.
cooking here. But as soon as their job opened back up, they dropped that and they left. Why? Because we've been taught to
Yes, that
wait on
comfort.
somebody else.
Yes.
But I want to tell persons also that even while you have a job, it doesn't stop you from having an entrepreneurial mind.
Right.
You always ought to be looking for a place to add value. When you work for a job, you're learning the system. You're learning how systems work. You're learning how structures work. You're learning how to put things together. I've worked in financial services for 15 years. My time there doesn't mean that I'm going to retire in financial services, but it's taught me what the financial system looks like. It's taught me from the front end to the back end what is expected. And out of that, I've developed a mindset. When we go we've got to learn to go on our jobs with our eyes wide open, with an understanding that this job is my capital to start my own venture. Now, I know people say, oh, not everybody is called to be an entrepreneur, not everybody is called to do that. Somebody got to work for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you have that mindset, you'll always be working for somebody.
Yeah.
And we have to train our people how to become entrepreneurial, even while working for somebody.
Yeah, I think what we need to, how we ought to think about it is this. We have some like 6,000 kids that come out of school every year. That's the reason why you need to be graduating out of some of those jobs.
Yes.
So that while you're on that job, as you say, learning to really hone your gifts and your talents,
Definitely.
so that you can find out who you are. Work hard if you need to go. That's your time to prepare yourself more, learn some stuff that you didn't know,
Yes.
so that when that opportunity comes, that you can move out and do something, because that is the only way that there will be matriculation in
Definitely.
the system.
Definitely.
If some people are coming out of the system.
And
you know?
and you know, another thing that we have, even if we're going to have this discussion about that, we have to also have a discussion about the system that is in place in the country. Because, you know, last week I thought about it. We talked a lot about working hard and being diligent, which is good. But what hit me is that if we are working hard in a system that is not designed to create entrepreneurs or to create persons who work for themselves, business persons, then we would find that we are no better than the slave on the plantation, because they worked hard too. But when there is a system that is not there to help to provide access and opportunity for these young people who are working hard, a system of meritocracy where if you work hard, there is a benefit to it, we would find ourselves still repeating the cycle of slavery. And just because we've come off the cotton plantation doesn't necessarily mean that we've left slavery. We have to now have a discussion nationally to say, what is it in our system? Is our system designed to birth entrepreneurs, or are we only designed to birth
Job
doorkeepers
seekers,
and job
yes,
seekers?
Yes, we must, and that must be intentional.
Yes.
If that is to change, it has to be intentional.
Yes.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, me and Pastor Dino are having this discussion around the table. I didn't let you know that you can get in on this. So this is an interactive program. Please,
Yes.
if you have any questions for him, please feel free to just put them on the various platforms. We'll certainly do our best to answer all of the questions that you might give to us.
Definitely.
Let's talk about the importance of goals, Pastor, and vision as it relates to money. Let's talk a little bit about that. Goals
Definitely.
and vision and goals as it relates to money.
Goals are a natural byproduct of vision. And so what happens is our vision gives us the picture. Our goals and money, as it relates to money, every vision has a dollar attached. Every vision has a cost to that. Jesus said, if any man is seeking to build a tower, he must first count the cost, because
Right.
there's always a cost that's attached to vision. And so when you're writing your goals, which are the steps to achieving your vision, then each goal must have not just be, how do you discern between a goal and a wish? A wish is just what I want to happen. A goal actually has a dollar figure and a deadline attached to it. And so when you have a goal to say, a vision of, I want to be a millionaire. How many millions is a millionaire? How many millions are you looking forward to? And we have to be specific when it comes to having our goals. And the persons who would have gone to any kind of training about goals, they learn that goals should be smart. They should be specific. They should be measurable. They should be attainable, meaning that they got to be, meaning realistic.
Right.
And they have to be time conscious. There has to be a time affixed to that goal, because if there is no time affixed to that goal, you have nothing to run toward. And when you get there, you don't know when you would have arrived.
Right.
And so when you're talking about money and you're talking about vision, every vision has a dollar value. What is the dollar value that's associated to your vision? And why is this so important? The Bible says in the book of Habakkuk, when you write the vision, you make it plain, and so that those who see it can run with it. A lot of times we don't have our visions manifested, or we don't have our visions come to pass, because we don't give the runners anything to run with. We don't give any. If somebody comes to you and asks you now, I want to sow a seed in your life concerning a vision, what is that dollar figure? What is that dollar figure that's attached to that gives you some kind of semblance to know this is what I ought to work hard for? And I find that a lot of persons are not working hard because they don't give themselves a target to shoot for. They don't give themselves a target to work after. They don't even give God anything to work with. And so when you're talking about having a vision for your life and having goals, your goals are the necessary steps. I often put it like this: when we come to talk about compliance, I said for every policy there are procedures. There's an overarching strategy that you have, but there's a set of procedures that get you there. When it comes to talking about goals again, you think about your life as a structure. You think about a structure as a house. Your structure is what you are building, but every house has various systems that work behind the scenes that make it a home. So you have the electrical system that when you flick on the lights come on. But behind the walls, these lights have all kind of wires and everything that's connected to a power source outside the house. When you turn on your water on the tap, the water comes out, but it comes through pipes and all kind of thing attached to a major reservoir outside. If you have a vision, meaning that your vision is this house, if you don't go behind the scenes and have goals that make up the systems that cause this house to function, you'll always find yourself just daydreaming.
Okay.
And for too long, we've had people who are daydreaming, just sitting down with their arms folded, waiting for God to come to make this happen. But we've got to give God some things to work with. You've got to have some goals to look forward to kind of know, this is what I expect to happen at this time. This is the cost. This is what I need. And then you give God something to work with.
Yeah, and then let me just ask this.
Sure.
There are some things, Pastor, that we have that are just, people have unrealistic visions. I would call them in many cases like aspirations, I guess.
Right.
They say, okay, well, I want this, but talk to us about how if somebody wants something, because people can dream and really go after them, that if I want, or this is my vision, you talk about their procedures. They want something, but they don't want to go through the hard work of really putting in what they need to put in to get down the road. They want that, but really it's unrealistic based on the effort that they want to make. In some case, I'm trying to say that visions could be unrealistic.
Visions, by the mere definition of a vision, they're expected to be unrealistic, because if it was something that you could have done, you would have done it. And so if it's something that you can put your hand on, there's no need to dream about it. The Bible says hope, even when it talks about hope, it says that if we could kind of touch hope and get it, there's no need to hope.
Yes.
Right? So hope is good. Having a big vision is good. But the thing is that if you just have that big vision and you don't have more or less steps to get there, you will make yourself sick. The Bible says hope deterred or deferred makes a heart sick. And so what happens is, when we have a vision for life, there ought to be some steps that you realize that, okay, from point A, this is where I have to go. And what I often tell persons is, when you have a vision for your life, you have to kind of do some reverse engineering. You look 10 years down the line to see where you want to be, and you work that back to years and months and days, up to hours, to walk that process out. Right. And so it's all right to have a vision that's big, but the key is this something that you know yourself is attainable? And that's how you run it through the filter. Is this something that is even possible? Because some things are impossible. Having a vision to say, I want to live on Mars. For you, that's impossible because it's not habitable yet. All right, it may not be habitable in your lifetime, so that may be something that's out there. But if it's something that you see that may not, you look at your current circumstances and it may say, you know what, based on what I see in my bank book and everything like that, I don't know how this is going to happen, but my faith tells me this is something that's out of my reach, but it's something that's attainable. And then you ask God for the wisdom to walk it through.
Yes. So we believe in dreaming. Yes, you can dream big, but just remember, after you have dreamt, you do need to get up.
Oh, yeah.
And begin to work towards fulfillment of that dream, which will be very hard work. And that's most of the times the problems that we face in this country, because we don't want to be excellent at our craft.
Right.
You're going to have to be excellent at your craft, and in order to do that, you are going to have to invest time, a whole lot of time. Okay, let's talk about what are the offense and defense mechanisms regarding finances.
What I often tell persons when it comes to finances is that, and it goes back to our earlier conversation, where you have persons who just tell you there's one part of it just to save, just to pay off debt. Don't drink your Starbucks, and that they kind of live you on this very narrow stream, and so you aren't even enjoying life. And so you have persons who are so frugal they don't enjoy life. They don't take a vacation. They just want to store up everything. But when you're talking about offense and defense, the defense is taking down the debt. Your offense is at the same time finding ways to increase wealth. And we must learn that if we're going to develop wealth, real wealth, we have to learn how to do both at the same time. You have to learn how to juggle both at the same time, because just because you're keeping expenses low and just because you're paying off debt, well, that does not mean that you will increase at any substantial level your area of wealth.
Okay.
Wealth comes from producing income generating assets. Wealth comes from using your mind to develop businesses. And that would be the difference between, I'm going to borrow this from Robert Kiyosaki, when it comes to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the 4 quadrants. You have the ESBI, the employee, where you work for somebody, the self-employed, where you work for yourself, but if you don't show up to work, you get no pay. Then you have the business owner who oversees all of those stuff, but and then the final leg is investor, all right, where you just let your money work for you. Those are the 4 stages. A number of us are stuck in E or S. We either work for somebody or we work for ourselves. And just because you work for yourself, you're still trading time for money. You don't answer anybody, but a lot of times when you are self-employed, you work longer hours because it all depends on you. But there ought to be a natural progression through the stages of wealth and through the stages of wealth building. And churches don't like to talk about it because we often call this taboo, and we often say if you have wealth, you are not humble, and you ain't gonna see the face of God, and a rich man can't get through a needle, eye of the needle, and we've taught ourselves that. But the truth of the matter is, there's only so much ministry you can do without money. Bishop Cooper, my pastor, he would say, extensive ministry is expensive ministry. And so we have to train the people of God that God said that I will cause men to bless you. Out of their bosom will they bless you. How will they bless you? Because they've achieved a certain level of wealth that they have sufficient to make sure their needs are met, and they have enough to help somebody else. That is the level that we have to look at when we are considered to be Christians. No, money is not at our heart. No, we can learn to live without it, but at the same time, God expects us to multiply that which He has given us.
Yes, there's no way that ministry works without money, and we do need blessed people in the kingdom to be able to fund ministry.
Definitely.
Most of the people that have money are not in the kingdom, and we need to be able to change that. And Paul talks about this in Timothy, about love. What he's talking about is, what is your relationship with money?
Yes.
It's the key.
Yes.
If you are loving money rather than loving God, then you're going to abuse it. Okay? And abuse is when you use it in an abnormal fashion.
And the truth of the matter is, the reason why a number of persons who are outside of the house of God making more money than those who are in the house of God is because I've learned that money is not a prayer thing. Money is a principle thing. If you work the principle, then you work it. See, a lot of people come into the church and they divorce themselves from understanding that God is a God of principle. They figure that they can just sit down and pray and then it can happen.
Right.
But those who are outside of the faith understand that there are certain principles that you work. If you if you give 7 and 8, or if you put your money in 7 and 8 investments, then you will realize that one of them has to spring up.
Right.
That you don't know what season it is, so you will learn how to diversify. You will learn there are some investments that work better in pandemics. You will learn that there are some investments that don't work in pandemics, and you invest in both so that in a pandemic or outside of a pandemic you still have wealth. But we found persons in the faith who have divorced themselves from this concept that I just gotta get out of here and go to heaven. No, Jesus says, occupy until I come. He even told his disciples, don't worry about when I come back. Your job is to occupy until I come.
Well, one of the reasons that we have a whole lot of problems with relationship to money, Pastor, is in a whole lot of instances, people have been preached bad doctrine
Definitely.
by certain people.
Definitely.
Because just a few years ago, you should be able to remember this. You know, that you just said just now that you can't pray about money. But some people in Christendom have been commanding money to come to them.
Oh yeah, money.
Money comes to me now.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I did that a couple of times, and unless my faith isn't that big, that it hasn't worked for me.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, when you pray and you ask, when you look at what God did, when you look at Joseph, you look at, let's use Joseph just for example. When there was going to be a famine, God never told Joseph to pray for money. God told Joseph to pray, and I will show you a dream. In the dream, I will give you strategy on how to work this. When Joseph got the strategy, what did his faith do? His faith caused him to go into the parliament and to go into the structure of the kingdom and determine, okay, these are the plans for the next 7 years. We're going to store up, because after that, there'll be 7 years of a little bit less. The reason for our prayer life is to receive strategies and tactics from God to know how to work this thing called money. We as believers of God, God knows where everything is hidden. The Bible says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. It's the glory of kings to search a matter out. What is our job as the people of God? Our job is to go into prayer, find out from God, where are the things hidden? What are the strategies to discover or uncover these tools and techniques and things that you have hidden into the system of the world, and how do I retrieve this? The Bible tells us as long as the earth remains, there's a system. There'll be seed time and harvest. As long as the earth remains, there's an ecosystem that works. And God says, when you seek first the kingdom, which is his way of doing things, and you seek righteousness, meaning you fall into line with what he is doing, all these things you've been praying about, they'll be added to you. Because he said, if you work the system right, there's the natural response to working the system right is these things you've been praying about will be just brought to your attention.
Okay, I have two questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Nina, before we move forward. The first question is, what are the benefits of passive income?
Oh, the benefits of passive income is that this is money that works for you when you're asleep. Meaning then that you would have put in the hard work at the front, meaning you would have invested or you would have set up the business, and then this frees up your most precious resource, which is time. You could spend money and go work and get the money back. But if you spend time, you don't get that back. And so what happens is passive income buys you your most precious resource, which is time. Time with your family, time with your friends, time to do what you want to do, and even time to think about other streams of generating income. Because what happens is when we spend our 8 hours focusing on somebody else's dream, we don't have time. We don't have the leisure to focus on our own dream. And a lot of persons only stay in the place of employee or working for somebody because they take the 8 hours that they're up, and after that 8 hours they go home and they go and watch TV, or they spend time doing everything else until they fall asleep, just to repeat the cycle again. Wait until Friday, say that the weekend was too short to go right back again. But when you use your time, which is after your 8 hours you've plugged into somebody else's dream to build your own dream, this would allow you to now develop what is called passive income. Passive income buys you your most precious resource, which is time.
Yeah, isn't that great? Because a lot of persons really, that's one of the things you were talking about, even about taking a vacation. There's something, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, about rest, rejuvenation of the body, rejuvenation of the mind, that you do need to get to a point where you can rest.
Yes.
And if you're not doing that, you're more than likely sinning against your body. Because when your body is overworked, you're not going to be able to operate at your optimum.
And the thing is, Pastor Rule, you would hear people say things, and now it makes sense. They say, boy, all I got to do is cross the water. because there's something about crossing the water, which is our vacation, that allows us to get out of our constant rat race, that allows us to think. And it's in our thinking that allows us to make wise decisions, which is why even in this hour, with the abundance of social media and Netflix and all this kind of stuff, what the enemy is really after is our ability to focus.
Right.
If he can get us distracted, he can keep us bound. If he can get us distracted, he can keep us always have to go from paycheck to paycheck. The greatest asset you have right now is your mind, and we have to guard our mind with all diligence.
Yeah, I want to just throw that in before I go to the next question, to any number of us, because people generally, we take vacations, and we actually work hard on these vacations we go on, where we are so much like up and down, that what you went for, rest,
You don't get
you need that when you come back.
right.
I have found out, and really, I'm not trying to make anybody jealous at all. I'm not trying to do that. But I found out that I take some time, and this is never was able to do this before, but I take time every now and again, like to go to Exuma or to go to Long Island.
Right.
The states, I've not been doing that lately, to say to go to the west. I go to the south,
Right.
Exuma or Long Island. Here's the reason. There's nothing like taking like my Bible and going out on the beach and sitting down with just the sea, just the waves going.
Correct.
And I remember just going, I could go there. By the time I would leave, I would have about 3 or 4 sermons. Same thing with Long Island. There's something about the quietness of the place where you can just settle and really take it in, and it rejuvenates the mind. So I just said something just now to some people who were planning on going somewhere. You don't need to get across the water as bad as you think. What you need is some rest.
Actually, and that was the key, and that was the secret power behind Jesus. Jesus spent more of his time away from them than actually doing miracles. Jesus spent his time, hours, the Bible would say, before the sun came up, while the disciples were still sleeping, spending time in communion with God, so that when he went out and did miracles, it was nothing off of him. When you would find that even every time you saw Jesus, he was sleeping. When you go on a boat, he was sleeping. He found time to rest, because he understood that when you are at rest, and that's why for a lot of people, God talks to them so much in dreams, because they're so busy during the day, he don't have time to talk to them. And so God waits for us to have our mind at rest, our bodies at rest, so that he can go and minister to us.
Right. So I told you all about that rest, because your mind is able then to be able to absorb some stuff, to come up with ideas
Yes.
that can cause you to generate wealth.
Yes.
But if you're always busy and you have no time, there is no time for God to speak to you, and for you to be able to get from him what he wants you to do. So I just thought I'd throw that in. Next question. What's your advice, Pastor Dana, on Bahamian investment? I think we were supposed to get this till later, but they're talking
Right.
about like shares and stocks.
Shares
What
and
about
stocks.
Bahamian
Shares
stocks?
and stocks. We don't have a wide variety of stocks or things to invest in, unfortunately, and hopefully that's one of the things that our system allows us to that the system changes to allow us to invest internationally. But because of COVID and everything like that, a lot of international investments have shut down, and we are kind of here. What I would advise persons to do is, the better rates are now either in your credit unions or in your government registered stock, or if you look at some of our investment houses, look at annuities and things like that. Because right now, banks aren't giving you anything on your investment. Okay, you would find that with banks particularly, you are actually spending more to keep your money there than actually. And I feel so free to say this now, because I'm not tied to any bank. You find that you would get 15 cents on interest, but you're paying $3 in charges. And so it isn't really helping you now to store your money at the bank. But if you're going to invest, I would say either use if you're still risk averse, go into the government registered stock, which is the central bank, which have pretty decent rates. Recently, they have released something where they have a year turnaround, a year tenor for 3%. You better than any bank you have. So you have that, or you have your credit union, or you have your annuity, or you invest to a business. Find a business that you can actually have a turnaround and get your money back there.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we have one more program. You're going to come back with us again next week. So this evening, I want to begin.
Yes, sir.
On retirement.
Okay.
So we talked about financial planning, and so for the last 10 minutes we have for this program, I want to start out to talk about retirement. I'm going to use something that one of our senior ministers said to me. He gave me these words of wisdom a few years ago. I want to credit Reverend Cedric Farquharson for this. He said to me, whatever you think you need for retirement, he said, you would probably better double it.
Yes.
Because when you do arrive there, it's more than you think. I guess the time would have passed. Things would have gotten so expensive and everything. But what you thought you need, you might need double. So how do you know let's talk about your numbers that you need to retire.
So let's talk about that. Let's go back to a place where I kind of redefine retirement to say it's not an age, so it's not 65, nor is it 30 years on a job. It's not an age nor years. It's actually you're coming to a place where you can do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it, because you have the resources to do it.
Right.
And the earlier you start, the earlier you can retire.
The earlier you mean you start to plan for retirement.
Plan for retirement.
Okay, yes.
And planning for retirement is an actual, not just having a dream of it, but actually putting money in. And because the earlier you start your retirement, you benefit from this thing called compound interest. So what happens is you can put small amounts at the beginning of your life. So you started working at 20. At age 20, you start putting your $100, $200 a month, and you let that ride until there was a story of somebody who was saved that for 7 years, and they let that sit until they got a little older, and they didn't have to put anything else in that, and they had $1 million+ sitting there waiting on them because they took 7 years of their life from 20 to 27 and just put $200 a month into a plan, right? That is one way. But when you're talking about looking at your numbers, a number of persons, we are learning very quickly that national insurance is not sufficient to supplement your lifestyle.
Right.
All right, and persons who crunch the numbers like that for national insurance, they will advise you that there will come a time that there will be no national insurance, because when the baby boomers are ready for retirement, then they would get their benefits out of there, and then if nobody else is putting in money after that, then it will be gone. So we have to plan outside of that. Learn about IRAs, which are your individual retirement accounts. All right. Learn that. Find the numbers. You have to find out what is your company contributing. All right. A couple of years ago, a number of companies would have switched from defined benefit to defined contribution. Right. What is defined benefit? That's when your company would put money in your retirement account for you. Right. Now they said, no, whatever you put in, that is what you get at the end of the day. All right. And so you have to find out if your company provides that. If your company is gracious to have a matching system in place, find out what they would match. So if they say, if you put 10%, we'll put 10%, go to the maximum of what they would match and match it along with that. But even in retirement, you go and you figure out that national insurance will only be a fraction of what you're making now. So you ought to have some of that passive income that person's talked about in another business, or having real estate that generates this income. You also have to consider, what are my numbers? Everybody's numbers are different, but consider that now your house that you got your mortgage for 30 years ago, the roof is now ready to be changed, because roofs naturally last 30 to 40 minutes. Yes, then after that, you have your car that has to be maintained. Your car doesn't retire when you retire. So your car has to get gas, your car has to be serviced, your car has to have a tire change, your car may need a paint job, whatever it is. The next thing you have to figure out is medical insurance. When you stop working, oftentimes your medical insurance stops with your payment. I mean, with your working life. So you have to ensure that if you fall and your body is now more vulnerable to being slower to repair, you need medical insurance. There sometimes illnesses may spring up up later in life, and you need, and a lot of people who retired with a good healthy nest egg that was wiped out because of one illness, one
Yes,
sickness,
yes.
whether it's you or your spouse, one sickness can wipe that out. So you want to ensure that you have medical insurance that's in place. You also want to ensure, when you think about your numbers, you want to think about travel. You want to be able to take vacations. You may want to keep your mind going. So you may want to take a course or two. So there's education that you want to consider. Another thing you may want to consider is that you want to probably just give to people, and you need extra funds to give. And unfortunately, when you retire, your electricity bill doesn't retire, your water bill doesn't retire, your internet doesn't retire, your phone bill doesn't retire. All of these things add up, and which is why we find that a number of persons are working until they're 65, 70, 75, not that they want to, but they have no other choice. And so I would advise persons, as you get ready for retirement, there ought to be a cutoff time for debt, getting into debt in your life. Go ahead.
My question is, who should people seek? What do we call it? Financial counsel to figure out what are my needs going to be? What should I be looking for retirement? Because I don't think that anybody sits down and goes through these things that you just like that.
They don't.
So they need to go to financial.
They need to go to a financial advisor. They need to go to a financial planner. There are a number of persons who are certified to do that. And we talked about it last week. Sorry. Make sure that you're getting financial advice from someone who has no horse in the race, like they say, who is not going to put you in something that just to meet numbers or quota, but who's going to actually walk you through this process. Right. A number of persons don't think about all of these small stuff about your house needing maintenance. They don't think about the small stuff like your car needing changes and you needing an emergency fund. They don't think about medical insurance. So you meet with your insurance agent. Somebody who sells you insurance to find out the cost of medical insurance, the cost of health insurance, the cost of even burial insurance. Because even when you're going, you want to make sure that you don't leave any exorbitant bills behind for the next generation, because you are actually shortcutting them from actually starting out earlier. And that's how you repeat the cycle. Cycles in the country are being repeated because the generation before are not making necessary preparations. Another thing is, you meet with your insurance agent, you meet with your banker. You also need to meet with essentially your doctor. Find out what your body, how much your body could take. Find out which numbers in your body are out of whack, so that you won't have to worry about excessive blood sugar counts and blood pressure counts.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is very unfortunate, and particularly in our country, lately, in the last, I'd say 30 to 40 years, is the invasion, what I call, of non-communicable diseases. And the sad thing about it is, people have medical insurance with their workplace, and the time when these things actually begin to come to manifest itself when you retire is the very time that the medical insurance becomes cost prohibitive.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, some people, their medical insurance, they would be underwater if they were receiving the highest amount of funds from national insurance. That cannot even pay their medical insurance, much less take care of other expenses.
But let me stretch us here. This is why the church ministries, people in the body of Christ, need to develop wealth, because a number of these agencies, these companies, are only in it for the money. But if you have people of God who are kingdom minded, who can say, okay, if we pool our resources, get these things done, or start our own insurance company, and these are the costs that we give to persons who are seniors. These are the persons. I know Salem would have had a credit union, and in the credit unions I've attached a medical plan or something. This is why people of God need wealth, not just to buy a car, a house, anything. We need it to ensure that, as Acts 2 says, that we have all things in common, and as there was a need in the house, those who had were able to give to those who didn't have. And we can do better if the kingdom of God and the kingdom people get together, put their resources together, get their mind together concerning business and wealth, and develop businesses and systems that actually help older people in their old age. Because we're learning that companies are really in it for the money. But if kingdom people get together and pool their resources and make these things happen, I believe we can make a dent in the kingdom of God and in the world.
That's a very good place for us to segue right into what I'll be doing. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, last Sunday I'm preaching on the power or the truth of the power of oneness.
Yes, sir.
And you went right there of how the church came together. Actually, I'm preaching part 2 of that this coming Sunday at 10 o'clock. You can join us on all of our media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us again to the end of another interesting and informative broadcast. I want to thank Pastor Dino once again for coming and sharing with us. We have so much more information to cover that we're going to take one more week. Thank you once again for joining us on Salem Speaks. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful rest of the week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.